All right, so we're going to see the clock. It is now rolling.
Here we go.
We saw an issue with that quick disconnect to the ship. There is a chance that automation will kick us out again if we encounter the same issue. But for now, the clock is rolling. We'll see if we pass around that T-minus 10-second mark. T plus 40 seconds, it's one hell of a sight from here. We see it arcing right over top of us. We see 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on Super Heavy as it starts to ascend skyward. Coming up on maximum aerodynamic pressure, then only about a minute and a half until we get into hot staging.
Wow, Dan, that was incredible. We could feel the building shaking here, feel the vehicle's power. Now we're just about a minute away from shutting down those engines on the booster. Again, this booster is flying for its second time today.
All right, so hot staging coming up a little under a minute. We're going to see all but the 3 center engines turn off on the booster. So our version of MECO, most engines cut off. And then just a few seconds later, hoping to see 6 engines ignite on ship to push it away. All right, hot staging, about 30 seconds. And definitely keep an eye on which way the booster flips. First ever directional flip we're going for today. Should flip straight up. See those engines powering down?
Booster engine cutoff. Ship ignition. Stage separation.
Incredible flip by Super Heavy booster, and you can see those 6 engines, those 3 engines on the ship ignited.
6 healthy Raptors running on ship, on its way to space. Peek that engine view, booster doing the boost back. Chris, how's it looking over there in Hawthorne, man?
It is looking...
chamber pressure is nominal.
It is looking absolutely incredible here in Hawthorne. As we said, 6 healthy engines on ship. We've got 13 out of 13 engines on the booster. Now down to those 3, which is what we expect in the final moments of the boost back burn. Now, as a reminder, we are not recovering the Super Heavy booster today. We are instead going to do some...
Boost back, shut down.
And there we had a good shutdown of the boost back burn. Next up will be the jettison of that hot stage ring.
Ship avionics, power and telemetry nominal.
Great call out there that everything looking nominal aboard the Super Heavy vehicle, which is returning to Earth, and we're going to be doing some experiments with it, including a higher angle of attack re-entry, as well as some engine tests as it gets closer to the Gulf. We are, again, because of these tests not recovering it, we are sending it to the Gulf on purpose to do those tests. But again, you see the booster on the left-hand side of your screen. You see ship with 6 healthy engines continuing its ascent to its planned suborbital trajectory. Everything going very well so far for Starship's 9th flight. Now 4 minutes, 15 seconds in. great views from inside of the aft engine area of ship there, looking at those 3 sea level and 3 Raptor engines on the right-hand side of your screen. The booster doing its LOX dump, that liquid oxygen dump. So because we don't need some of that liquid oxygen propellant in its tanks, we vent that propellant out to lessen the booster's mass as it comes in for its landing. Just absolutely gorgeous views watching these 2 vehicles do their respective things in the skies over Texas here today. And Dan, we're approaching the 5-minute mark into the flight. Super Heavy is descending rapidly. What can we expect here in the next few minutes as it does its atmospheric tests?
Yeah, now as we had talked about, Super Heavy might not have a very smooth ride down. We're going to be putting it through this higher angle of attack. So we're kind of pitching it up a tiny bit, increasing drag. We've done this in wind tunnels. We've done this in computer modeling. It shows that sometimes the control isn't great, but only one way to really prove it out, and that's to get real-world data. So here comes Super Heavy. It should be igniting for its landing burn in just about 40 seconds from now.
And we are going to relight 13 engines, then bring that down to 3 engines. As we talked about earlier, we will be intentionally shutting down. We will be shutting down one of those 3 center engines intentionally to push the limits of the Super Heavy booster.
Ship Raptor, chamber pressure is nominal.
And continuing to see 6 healthy engines on the ship. 3 sea level and 3 vacuum engines still ignited as the Super Heavy booster is making its way back down to Earth.
We can see those grid fins doing some heavy work.
Booster landing startup.
Ignited for our landing burn. It may have ended with that landing burn. Does look like we lost telemetry from the booster once we started into that landing burn. Did you hear confirmation that the booster did demise? So the booster's flight ending before it was able to get through landing burn, but again, we are not bringing that back. We were expecting it to make a hard splashdown in the Gulf. We were getting live data back the entire time through that high angle of attack flight, so that was something that was really vital for us to get during this reuse. First free flight of booster in the books. All right, ship has about 2 minutes left.
In about 2 minutes, we expect all 6 Raptor engines to shut down. That will be SECO, basically second engine or second stage engine shut off. And these are some incredible views, Dan, from the aft end of the ship, watching as the engines stay ignited with the Earth in the background.
As always, the Starship avionics team, the techs. I think we just heard the booster. But all right, we got about a minute left into this burn. All eyes definitely on ship as we get through the final stages into its ascent. We're expecting it to start to cut those engines off in about 45 seconds.
Terminal guidance.
All right, just about 30 seconds to go. We're in terminal guidance in the final stages of this ascent burn. We did see shutdown of the Raptor engines. We do stagger these, so we do the Raptors first. Those 3 have shut down successfully. Sea level's still running.
Ship engine cutoff.
Ship
Ship engine
Nominal
cutoff,
insertion.
the three most beautiful words in the English language.
And great call out that we had nominal insertion. An incredible flight test so far today. We reflew a super heavy booster for the very first time in 9 test flights. Ship is in its orbital trajectory. Again, it's going to remain suborbital for its mission today. But it ignited
Ship FTS is saved.
It ignited all 6 of its engines and made it all the way through SECO just now.
All right, if you're just tuning in, we are about 30 minutes into today's flight test. And the ship is on its suborbital trajectory. As you can see in some of the views and from some of the telemetry, we are in a little bit of a spin. We did spring a leak in some of the fuel tank systems inside of Starship, which a lot of those are used for your attitude control. And so at this point, we've essentially lost our attitude control with Starship. We are still on a path toward re-entry. We are suborbital, so no matter what, we are going to enter. However, this lowers the chances for it to be a controlled re-entry. So if you think back to Flight 3, when we had something similar happen, just the end symptom of a loss of attitude control, we were in a roll by the time we hit re-entry. So we are going to re-enter. We should hopefully still have views. The Starlink satellites are pretty robust to still maintaining contact. We've got 4 of those terminals on the vehicle, and they're pretty robust to maintaining contact even when we are in a spin, essentially. So we should hopefully continue to keep live views. It's going to still be dark until we get a little bit closer to entry, as we are a little bit, we're coming up on Africa. I believe we do swing just to the south of that continent. And by the time we start heading out over the Indian Ocean, we'll start heading into a sunrise. So, not looking great with a lot of our on-orbit objectives for today, where we were hoping to do the PES deploy and relight an engine, and then really importantly, get into that controlled entry to really put the heat shield through the ringer. Nonetheless, Starship marching forward towards that re-entry over the Indian Ocean. So we'll continue to hang with it and give you any updates as things continue to change. All right, so we are 42 minutes and change into today's flight test. You're seeing the light show start as Starship is getting closer to its reentry. If you're just tuning in, we were able to successfully make it to orbit, run into a couple of issues as we've coasted to our entry point over the Indian Ocean. At this point, we had lost attitude control of the ship and entered into a spin. The team made the call to do what's called passivate the vehicle, so we're essentially venting all of the remaining propellant overboard, and it's going to make an uncontrolled reentry. Important to note, this is a contingency that is planned for, and we clear the zones in the Indian Ocean where these entries could take place. So we're not going to come down exactly where we would have had nothing happened, but we do clear a tremendous amount of space out in the Indian Ocean in the event that we run into this. We understand that there are always risks, essentially, with these flight tests, with the hardware, but we don't really accept any compromise when it comes to protecting people.
And it is one thing to note is we will actually still re-enter in our planned airspace zone, which is good. That is exactly what we planned for. We do plan for if something does go a little bit off nominal, that we have enough airspace cleared out for situations just like this.
Yeah, re-entry is still just that really critical phase that we need to try and gather as much data, as much information as possible. Is a fully reusable heat shield has never been flown before, the history of space flight, and that's something that Starship still has to crack. And so we had a whole range of experiments on this one at this point, and we just started to lose some of our cameras, so it's very possible that we'll start to lose contact with Starship a lot sooner than we would have if it was a nominal reentry. So we are expecting it to break up essentially on its reentry over the Indian Ocean. So not able to do a lot of our on-orbit objectives today, but just the fact that we, got it into space was just a really big moment for a lot of the team.
Yeah, and another thing to note is that Super Heavy did fly for its second flight today. It first flew on Flight 7, and it made it all the way to our shutdown of all the engines and stage separation, getting ship into its suborbital trajectory today. It did ignite its 13 engines, but it did demise at that point. We did plan to fly it back down to Earth at a higher angle of attack, and we do expect it to stress the vehicle a lot more than what we've seen previously. So it's not unexpected that we did lose the booster before we got to the actual landing.
Yeah. So we're gonna continue to hang out and see if we get any updates on ship. It does look like we might be getting some video back soon. There we go. So this is a view essentially on the top part of Starship. You're looking up at the payload bay and towards the nose cone. So views are going to be a little bit scarce potentially, as again we are in essentially a tumble. We had lost that attitude control. So Starlink, when it's able to connect, able to feed this down. We are at the phase where we would expect entry to start within the next minute or so. So we are entering uncontrolled, but again, we're entering into an airspace and a sea space that is cleared and monitored in advance of launch and before we get to this phase.
And with the views that we are able to see, you are seeing a lot of that plasma build up. During reentry, we do expect the vehicle to see about 1400 degrees Celsius, and there you can see the flap feeling that temperature there, a little bit melting away. But as we expected with the spinning of the vehicle, we are no longer controlling the attitude of the vehicle. So this is now, at this point in the test flight, it is expected to see it begin to demise a little bit on its way back down to Earth.
Yeah, and so we'll stick with it for as long as we're kind of getting any reach back from the ship as it starts to make this reentry. But yeah, so it's re-entering actively right now. And again, we did do what's called passivation. So you essentially vent all of your excess propellant overboard before you hit the atmosphere. That's a safety measure we can take on the ship while you still have contact with it. So that was done. It's now coming down in the predetermined hazard area that was cleared ahead of flight. Not controlled, so we're not going to get all of that reentry data that we're still really looking forward to. This is kind of a new generation of ship. It has different flaps, improved heat shield, a whole lot of things that we're really trying to really put through the ringer, as there's a whole lot we still need to learn before we get to kind of the next step that we're hoping for, which is going to be that ship going orbital and eventually coming back here for a catch. So getting through one of these fully is going to be really important. It's not going to be today, but we are just going to stick with the ship, see what else we can learn as it makes its way through the atmosphere and brings an end to the 9th flight test. So we'll stick with it.
If you're just now joining us, we did have an on-time liftoff from Starbase Texas at 6:30 p.m. Central Time of the Flight 9 vehicle. We did have some incredibly stressing objectives today. The Super Heavy booster flew for its second flight. It first flew on Flight 9 and made its way to take ship all the way up to stage separation, doing its second flight ever, which is pretty incredible. We did lose the booster on the way back down, as we did fly it back down at a higher angle of attack. So as expected, we did have it demise on the way back down.
Yeah, we were able to get all the way to that landing burn, though. So we made it through that higher angle of attack. So a lot of great data that's going to help us improve those future booster flights.
Yeah, we did do the directional flip, and it worked.
Yep.
It was actually
Flipped
a great
right
view
direction
that we saw. And then ship continued 6 healthy Raptor engines in the beginning of its flight, making it all the way to SECO and coasting for quite a while. We made it to the expected time that we would open up the payload door. Unfortunately, the door did not open as we expected it to, so we did not deploy the 8 Starlink satellites.
Yeah, we ran into a couple of issues once ship got there, but I can tell you it was a pretty crazy moment for a lot of the people that were standing here for ship to make it there. It's been a couple of flights, but it was really exciting to see. Ran into some issues on orbit. We weren't able to deploy the Starlinks. We eventually lost attitude control, dealing with some propellant links inside of the ship. And we did lose attitude control. And just to confirm, we did lose contact with the ship officially a couple of minutes ago. So that brings an end to the 9th flight test. So still a lot of work to do, but really big moment. Chris, how's everybody doing over there in Hawthorne? What's the vibes, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's a test program, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to learn, and that was definitely the vibe and the atmosphere here at Hawthorne. Would have been great to see ship get all the way through its objectives today, but with all of that data that came down through the Starlink system, we're definitely going to learn it, and we're definitely going to fix that and push forward. Also, great to see the responsible engineers here in Mission Control talking with the flight control teams in Starbase. We talked about how it's great having that expert knowledge on console to be able to go to at a moment's notice, and that really helped us make the right decisions in orbit today when we decided to passivate the vehicle. So we will be here looking forward to Flight 10 and some success on future flights.
All right, well, obviously congratulations to everybody that poured so much time, effort into getting this ship, this rocket off the pad. The last 2 months have been an absolute gauntlet for a lot of people, and we're continuing to learn more about this ship, about this rocket. We are trying to do something that is impossibly hard, and it's not always you're not going to reach it in a straight line. We said there's going to be bumps, there's going to be turns, but seeing that ship in space today was a hell of a moment for us. So congratulations to every single person who put time, effort, sweat, anything into that rocket.
Yeah, this is exactly the SpaceX way. We're going to learn, iterate, and iterate over and over again until we figure it out. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you for the fine people of Cameron County, including the residents of the newest city of Starbase, as well as the Coast Guard, Federal Aviation Administration, Government of Mexico, as well as the Australian Space Agency.
All right, now, this is not the end. We're going to have a whole bunch of cool liftoff stuff, so be sure to follow us on X at SpaceX.